Hello and welcome to Astromantic. This is part 2 of a companion video to my astrology coordinates video, in which I explained the ecliptic and equatorial systems astrologers use to obtain the celestial longitude and latitude values of planets. I discussed the aspects of declination, parallels, and contra-parallels, or celestial latitude, having to do with the planet's similar locations above or below or on opposite sides of the celestial equator. Please watch that other video first if you don't understand what I'm talking about. In the Part 1 companion video, I discussed Vincent van Gogh's parallels and contra-parallels, along with the zodiacal aspects they emphasize. I looked at the condition of the relevant planets to see how the aspects manifested in Van Gogh's short life. In this Part 2 video, I do the same with Trump's chart to see how his declination aspects are working out for him. I use the tropical zodiac with Placidus and whole sign houses. Donald John Trump was born on June 14, 1946 in Queens, New York at 10:54 a.m. Though there's some dispute about his time of birth, these are his aspects in the grid view of his chart, with his declination aspects on the right and his longitudinal or zodiacal aspects on the left. I've listed Trump's declination aspects here, starting with the tightest orbs first, and you can see that as with Van Gogh's chart, some of Trump's parallels and contra-parallels do not aspect each other by zodiacal longitude. If you were analyzing his chart looking at just the longitudinal or zodiacal aspects, you'd miss out on the information these declination aspects provide. I'll delineate the Sun and Moon aspects and the Venus aspects, and leave the Uranus and Pluto aspects for future videos. Okay, let's take a look at Trump's strongest declination aspect first, his moon contra-parallel and opposite his sun. Not only was Trump born on the day of a full moon, but he was also born on a lunar eclipse, which happened about 4 hours after he took his first breath. Ancient cultures thought eclipses were divine omens of impending doom, especially for leaders. Some cultures thought it was when demons were released into the world, since it's a break in the natural order of the way our two luminaries cast their light. Astrologers note that eclipses usually reveal or conceal hidden secrets. They have a Uranian quality to them of sudden, accelerated change or reversals pertaining to the matters ruled by the signs and houses of the chart where they occur. A person born on an eclipse will most likely have a life punctuated by unusual or sudden life-altering events, since that's the energy embedded in their astrological DNA. Trump's sun and moon have declination aspects to the same planets. Trump's moon, opposite and contra-parallel his sun, indicate that his parents weren't getting along that great when he was born, since sun represents the father and moon the mother in a chart. This creates problems in his relationships because his ego is at odds with his emotions. In general, people who have planetary oppositions tend to identify with one of the planets and disown or project the other. The key is to consciously balance the polarizing energies and find a compromise. Those who've learned to manage their oppositions are said to be more open-minded and diplomatic than people with no oppositions at all, since this challenging aspect forces people to deal with a different point of view. In Trump's case, it's clear he hasn't learned to manage his sun-moon opposition, at least in terms of relationships, since he obviously over-identifies with his sun, the sect lord of his day chart, representing his father, his ego, and his status, and is much less willing to express his moon's vulnerable emotional qualities in relationships. We know he revered his multimillionaire father, Fred Trump, who urged his son Donald to be a killer. Trump rarely speaks of his mother, Mary. He modeled himself after his belligerent, controlling father and his idea of strength as dominance. Trump's submissive, traditional, rarely mentioned mother, and women in general for Trump, represent inferior beings. They're meant to be dominated, as this is what his parents modeled in his family. We see it in his overall treatment of women, viewing them as mainly sex objects or subservient employees doing his bidding. He labels women beautiful or ugly, nice to him or nasty. Being vulnerable, showing empathy, is anathema to Trump, a sign of weakness in his mind, and a rejection of his moon. The condition of his luminaries is not that great in terms of essential dignity. Like Van Gogh's 20-degree Sagittarius moon, Trump's 21-degree Sag moon has a bit of face dignity because of its mutual reception with the insect malefic Saturn, while Trump's sun is his own face lord. That's something, but not much. His Gemini sun has better sect dignity, being in Haze. Trump's is day chart, and the day lord sun is in the top hemisphere in a masculine sign, so he's very comfortable. This is compounded by the fact that Trump's sun is in his 10th Placidus house of high status and career, as was Van Gogh's sun, indicating the high status of their fathers in the community, and that they too would come before the public in their career. Trump's sun, though, is also in his 11th whole sign house of friends and organizations and perks from his job. So his career involves groups of people, organizations, and benefits from his high-status position. Trump's sun, then, is strongly accidentally situated by sect and house, and in very good shape. His moon, though, not so much, since it's moon Kai. The word looks like Munakara, but I use the Punjabi pronunciation that astrologer Joy Usher prefers, since she's the expert on this condition. I detailed what moon Kai means in the Part 1 Van Gogh video. If you watch that, then you'll remember it's when planets' dispositors cross sect boundaries twice. In Trump's case, his moon, a night sect planet, is ruled by Jupiter, a day sect planet, who's in Libra, ruled by Venus, a night sect planet. This crossing of sect boundaries twice makes the first planet in the chain very uncomfortable because it's not getting its needs met, since its dispositor isn't getting its needs met either. So Trump's moon is in a state of contention. As with Van Gogh's sun and Saturn, Trump's moon feels constantly under attack and will tend to act in extreme ways. Again, I refer you to Joy Usher's materials for more information, including her own site and her books and articles. In the table Usher provides on her site with her delineations of moon Kai planets, she says a moon Kai moon indicates a difficult relationship with mother, difficulty in maintaining physical strength or mobility, poor health through illness, emotional stress or accidents, a highly sensitive or self-protective individual, fears of separation, alienation, or betrayal by loved ones, a need for family to provide an emotional buffer against the outside world, and a strong need for privacy or personal space, shyness, or withdrawal in public arenas. Trump hasn't suffered from poor health as far as we know until recently, but then he's almost 80 years old now. We know he's most definitely not shy, since he demands attention 24/7 and has been diagnosed by many reputable psychiatrists as a malignant narcissist who requires constant admiration. That's partly to do with his sun's condition, though, and the fact that his moon is in his 5th whole sign house, which is an attention-seeking placement where the moon likes to perform and be the center of attention. However, Trump is extremely sensitive, as we all know from his thousands of lawsuits. He sues anyone who doesn't bend the knee fast enough or who dares to criticize him or express a different opinion. He immediately turns to the legal system, ruled by Jupiter, his moon's dispositor, to exact revenge and monetary damages. And now that he's got the DOJ to act not as an independent agency defending the Constitution and the rights of all U.S. citizens as intended, but as his own personal law firm, staffed with sycophants and his personal criminal defense lawyers, we're all witnessing firsthand the extremes he goes to punish those not sufficiently loyal to him. In the contra-parallel and opposition between his sun and moon, Trump's sun clearly prevails, not only because it's in better shape, being the sect lord and in Haze, and in the 10th Placidus and 11th whole sign house, but because his out-of-sect, eclipsed moon is greatly weakened by its debilitating moon Kai condition. It's also closely parallel and conjunct the malefic south node. Because he was born on the day of an eclipse, Trump's nodes are very near his sun and moon, with his moon being more closely conjunct and parallel his south node than his sun is conjunct and parallel his north node. Trump's moon and south node are in his 4th Placidus and 5th whole sign house. The 4th house has to do with home, real estate, and early childhood, as well as one of the parents, in Trump's case, his mother. His very close moon-south node parallel and conjunction manifest as a disconnect between his emotions and his mother, and his detached emotional nature, which is compounded by his moon's opposition and contra-parallel to Uranus, a planet known for emotional detachment and independence. We know from Trump's biographical details that his emotional issues hark back to an early childhood wound to do with a lack of nurturing at a critical time in his psychological development. His dad wasn't around much as he was off building his real estate empire, and his mother was very sick after the difficult birth of her last child, Robert, when Trump was just over 2 years old. She developed a serious infection and went through several surgeries. In fact, she almost died. Because she was hospitalized and very ill for long periods, she was unavailable to nurture Trump the toddler during a critical developmental phase. Others have noted how Trump rarely speaks of his mother. In this Politico article from 2018 called Donald Trump's Mommy Issues, the author of the book, The Attachment Effect, Peter Lovenheim, writes, friends of the Trump family who knew the Trump kids when they were young have reported they rarely saw Mrs. Trump, and that Donald, while in awe of his father, was very detached from his mother. Lovenheim notes that Trump's powerful sense of self-reliance and near inability to acknowledge self-doubt, his bragging about his sexual relations, his almost complete lack of close friends, his multiple marriages, and his unstable relationships with White House staff, cabinet members, and congressional leaders of both parties are consistent with attachment avoidance. As a couple of past presidents of the American Psychoanalytic Association, quoted in another Politico article on Trump and his mother, say, "A devoted mother gives to her child the capacity to trust, a sense of security versus insecurity, knowing what's real and what's not real. The capacity for empathy develops through your maternal relationship." Trump's early psychological wound manifests in the public sphere today as his pronounced emotional immaturity and his lack of empathy for people, as though he's still stuck emotionally at the age of his psychological wounding. The whole world sees his acting out, his brat-like childish behavior, his emotional outbursts, petulance, temper tantrums, petty remarks, and willful defiance. He's clearly not a normal, well-adjusted adult. Savvy world leaders who need something from the U.S. have learned how to manipulate Trump by cajoling him, praising him, flattering him, pretending he's the greatest ever, and tiptoeing around his many thin-skinned insecurities so as not to rile him up into an angry, emotional frenzy, resulting in all-night hate tweets and spiteful retaliations. Some leaders just treat him as a spoiled brat and tell him no. "You will not get your way by bullying us," which of course just further enrages him and results in impetuous punishments. Because he's emotionally damaged and extremely insecure, Trump can't handle the fact that he could be wrong about anything.
You can't handle the truth!
So he hides his vulnerabilities and maintains a mask of strength and invincibility. His knee-jerk reaction, whenever he's faced with failure, is to save face by blaming others or denying reality altogether, insisting we not believe our lying eyes and ears, but bend to his distorted view that he is always right, always a winner. If you don't demonstrate absolute belief in his infallibility and brilliance, you're out, subject to ongoing harassment, intimidation, and legal peril, as he brings the full weight of the federal government to bear on those he deems his enemies, and also unleashes his rabid supporters on people who are only too happy to violently defend dear leader. Obviously, Trump's a gigantic, bottomless pit of emotional need, except he sees emotional neediness as weakness, so to cover up his massive insecurities, he overvalues strength through macho displays of callous cruelty, sadistic bullying, and angry outbursts. His mask is that of a tough guy, an alpha male, though he's very easily triggered, and then he lashes out like a bratty child or whines about how he's being picked on unfairly by Democrats or judges or the media, etc. Trump's strongman pose is a front, not because he seems to fold like a paper tiger with his on-again, off-again tariffs, ergo Trump Taco, Trump always chickens out, the nickname he earned after his erratic and chaotic implementation of global tariffs. His strongman persona is obviously a front, though, because it completely melts away in the presence of actual strongmen, especially the murderous Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. Around him, Trump morphs into a giddy, love-struck schoolgirl, rolling out the red carpet, slavishly heaping praise on the convicted war criminal, patting his arm, clapping for him, just completely abasing himself, looking weak and pathetic, like a silly fanboy, humiliating our nation in the eyes of the world. With non-dictators, though, Trump over-identifies with his son and exhibits stereotypical toxic masculine traits of aggression, intimidation, predation, and forceful dominance. Trump's been diagnosed as a malignant narcissist and even a sociopath by many reputable psychiatrists. I recommend watching the 2020 documentary Unfit, made by the group of psychiatrists and mental health experts called Duty to Warn. They published the 2016 book, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump, now in an expanded and updated version with 50 mental health experts explaining why Trump's psychopathy is so dangerous for our country. Dr. Bandy Lee, a medical doctor, forensic psychiatrist, and a world expert on violence, is the editor of that book and has also written Profile of a Nation, Trump's Mind, America's Soul. She calls attention to the multiple ways in which Donald Trump has directly inspired, incited, fueled, and laid down a culture of violence in line with his paranoia and violence proneness under stress. Dr. Lee and the psychiatrists of Duty to Warn urge at the very least that 1, Trump be removed from access to the nuclear codes, and 2, his war-making powers be curtailed. Trump's Placidus Sag moon's placement in the angular 4th house strengthens it, since the angles are dynamic positions of power from which planets can more overtly express their energies. In the whole sign system, his moon is in the 5th house of creativity, romance, and recreation, another good house for a planet, since the 5th is trine to the ascendant and so is considered lucky. Trump's moon in the Placidus 4th and whole sign 5th house manifests as his multiple mansions at his golf courses, combining 4th house home with 5th house recreation and sports. Jupiter rules his Sagittarius moon in South Node, and also foreign people and countries, so it's no surprise Trump's workforce has been largely foreign immigrants, and that he's made deals with many foreign individuals and governments involving his properties, from selling condos and houses predominantly to wealthy Russian oligarchs, to doing business with Saudi Arabia's Live Golf League that holds tournaments at his golf courses, which, by the way, is a giant conflict of interest, another national security issue. Trump's also helping the Saudi regime sports wash their oppressive human rights violations, while he personally makes millions. Regarding the 4th Placidus house of his moon, the Trump Organization is a family business, started by his father Fred, and now includes Trump's own children, linking his 4th and whole sign 5th. His office, before he was president, was in Trump Tower, where he lived in New York City. So his opposition, Sun in the Placidus 10th, ruling his career, opposite and contra-parallel his moon in the Placidus 4th, ruling home, seems pretty well integrated in terms of the house meanings, since he's effectively combined work and home. In terms of the whole sign houses, he's also effectively combined the 5th house of sports and recreation with the 11th house of clubs and organizations, since he lives in mansions on his golf club resorts. The whole Epstein connection is interesting too, since it was from Trump's Mar-a-Lago club in Florida that his good friends, the convicted pedophiles Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, poached young women for their sex trafficking ring, tying in the sexual associations of the 5th whole sign house and the 11th whole sign house of friends. Remember that his Moon-Kai moon is, as astrologer Joy Usher says, ever on standby for rebellion, dissent, or incoming hostility, constantly moving from defense to offense. Trump lives in battle mode. That's his default setting. You can see that Trump's Mars and his Saturn are also Moon-Kai, meaning their associations and what they rule in his chart are also, as Trump experiences them, under constant threat. Saturn rules the government, authority figures, and experts, and also Trump's own sense of expertise and authority. Mars rules virility, masculinity, drive, violence, and one's inner warrior. Trump's hypersensitive about all these things, feeling unfairly challenged and attacked by what he calls the deep state, and experts and authorities from all industries who don't conform to his delusional belief that he knows more than they do and is always right about everything. We know that his closest mentor and role model, another Saturn figure for Trump, was the corrupt, amoral mafia lawyer Roy Cohn. Cohn advised Trump to deny any wrongdoing and always be on the attack, which has been Trump's lifelong MO. As the filmmakers of a recent documentary on Roy Cohn said, he taught Trump to deflect and distract, never give in, never admit fault, lie and attack, publicity no matter what, win no matter what, all underpinned by a deep, prove-me-wrong belief in the power of chaos and fear. And so Trump comes out swinging, Mars, constantly feeling under pressure to assert his authority, Saturn, by sheer dominance, employing the U.S. military now in Democrat-run cities against U.S. citizens in a hyper-aggressive show of force, Mars, to assert his authoritarian control, Saturn, even though his reason that he's fighting crime is clearly a lie, since the worst crime-ridden cities are in GOP-led states, as Governor Pritzker of Illinois pointed out. Trump's actually doing this, of course, because his feelings are hurt, Moon, since blue state voters didn't vote for him and actively protest against him and his fascist regime. So because the majority of people don't praise and admire and like him in these cities, he orders armed soldiers to intimidate them and punish them. Trump gets off on violence. That's another element of his psychopathy. His military takeover of cities demonstrates his 3 dangerous Moon-Kai planets in action: Mars, Saturn, and Moon, all behaving in extreme, out-of-control ways. Overall, Trump's Moon South Node parallel and conjunction manifest as an emotional disability, evident in his lack of empathy and his immature emotional histrionics and extreme volatility. He has not learned the South Node lesson of letting go of past hurts, slights, and failures, or of how to forgive and forget. Let's move on to Trump's Sun parallel and conjunct his North Node. I discussed his sun's condition in the sun-moon section, so we know it doesn't have much essential dignity, but has great accidental dignity, both by placement at the top of his chart and by sect, since it's in haze. His sun is also his chart's ruler, since Trump has a Leo ascendant, and in the Placidus system, the sun rules his 12th as well as his 1st. The 12th is the house of unseen enemies, secrets, hospitalizations, institutions like asylums and prisons, as well as suffering and dreams and the unconscious. His Sun North Node aspects directs even more attention to his Placidus 10th house of career and his destiny of appearing before the public in a high-status role. The Leo 12th and first house rulerships indicate that Trump's personality, the way he presents himself and starts things, and his behind-the-scene activities, his secrets and unconscious drives, all play a role in his public status and career. As I discussed in the Part 1 Van Gogh video, whereas the South Node is said to weaken the planet it touches, the North Node increases the qualities of the planet it conjoins. And whereas the South Node, or the tail of the dragon, is associated with spirituality and renunciation, urging us to let go of and move beyond old patterns and habits that no longer serve our soul's purpose, the North Node has to do with learning new skills and with materialism, accumulation, success, and increase, feeding the head of the hungry dragon. In Indian or Vedic astrology, both nodes are malefics, remember, because they bring confusion, illusions, and delusions. What gets boosted in Trump's chart with his sun conjunct and parallel his North Node, then, is his ego and his desire for high status. Hence his lifelong obsession with being on the Forbes 500 billionaires list and his fascination with celebrities and fame. Part of Trump's inferiority complex involves being from an outer borough. His father's real estate empire focused on Brooklyn and mostly Queens, where Trump was born and grew up. But Trump wanted to conquer Manhattan, the richest and most high status of the 5 New York City boroughs. So that was a driving force in his life. Trump's Gemini sun, parallel and conjunct his North Node in the Placidus 10th, whole sign 11th house, combined to manifest as Trump being a leader or a public communicator, 10th house, associated with organizations, friends, public groups, and perks from the career, 11th house. But don't forget, the nodes are shadow planets, points in space. They're not real physical bodies up there in the sky. And as such, like shadows, they're associated with delusions, illusions, and confusion. Trump spent his early adult years chasing publicity in New York City, fighting for space in tabloids and gossip columns, fitting for a Gemini sun, to get his name before the public, by calling reporters and barely even disguising his voice, pretending to be his own spokesman, his name John Barron, John Miller, or David Dennison, who would detail all the supposedly exciting things Donald Trump was doing, as well as criticize and insult other media figures and politicians he disliked. He created the illusion of fame and success to puff up his profile as a mover and a shaker, and hanging around other wealthy playboys in New York City, partying and vying to get his picture in papers and magazines, all in service to his outsized ego, sun, parallel, and conjunct the North Node at the top of his chart. In the late 80s, Trump hired journalist Tony Schwartz to ghostwrite his bestseller, The Art of the Deal, for $250,000 and half the book's royalties, which Schwartz still gets today and donates to charity, calling it blood money. Schwartz regrets helping to create the myth of Donald Trump as a successful businessman. He said, Trump is not only willing to lie, but he doesn't get bothered by it, doesn't feel guilty about it. There's an emptiness inside Trump, an absence of a soul, an absence of a heart. He says the book should be renamed The Sociopath and recategorized as fiction. Because we now know from Trump's tax information obtained by the New York Times that while he was bragging about his fantastic deal-making skills, he was also claiming more than $1 billion in losses on his tax forms over 10 years in the 80s and the 90s. Then, from 2004 to 2017, for 15 seasons, Trump went national, playing the role of a successful businessman on the reality TV program The Apprentice, which catapulted him to nationwide fame, though he was actually considered a joke in serious business circles, especially in New York City, where he mainly operated and struggled to get financial backing because of his multiple bankruptcies and business failures, all proving that Donald Trump was in fact a terrible businessman. Stories of how he constantly stiffed his contractors are numerous and legendary, as well as his links with the criminal underworld. He was forbidden from opening a casino in Australia because of his ties to the mafia. Trump's multiple business failures include Trump Airlines, Trump the Game, various Trump hotels and casinos in New York and Atlantic City, all of which went bankrupt, The Trump Foundation, a supposedly charitable organization that he founded, but it was discovered in 2016 that he had misused the funds, so he was ordered to pay $2 million to 8 charities. It was dissolved by court order in 2018 because he used it primarily for his own personal gain. Then there's the notorious Trump University. He ended up paying a $25 million settlement for defrauding students in that scam. Trump beverages like Trump Ice and Trump Vodka also failed, as did GoTrump.com, a travel website, and Trump Mortgages, Trump Steaks, and Trump Magazine, as did Trump Ocean Resort in Baja, Mexico. He was sued for fraud by the condo buyers there for an undisclosed sum. The Trump Organization, which was found to have committed business fraud in 2024. And then, of course, Trump, the self-admitted tax cheat, was himself criminally convicted of 34 counts of business fraud and is now a felon. Truth Social, the MAGA Twitter clone that he launched in 2022, has never turned a profit and has lost hundreds of millions of dollars. The Chinese-based company that took Truth Social public was itself under investigation by the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. But Trump Media and Technology Group, TMTG, that runs Truth Social, is now primarily in the crypto business. So of course the SEC, now purged and staffed with sycophants under Trump's rule, has dropped all its investigations and lawsuits into shady crypto figures and businesses and ordered crypto regulations be repealed. Trump pardoned BitMEX, an entire corporation, the first time a president has done that. BitMEX pled guilty to violating the Bank Secrecy Act, which is supposed to prevent money laundering and sanctions evasions by bad guys. Just search Trump crypto and you'll see dozens of articles about how Trump's TMTG crypto projects personally made him around $2.37 billion in the first half of 2025, practically doubling his wealth since he took office in his second term. And now that he's gone public with his crypto coins, he and his kids have made billions more. Because of The Apprentice, which had a fake set since Trump's actual office in Trump Tower was so old and shabby looking, Trump's been able to exploit this pretend fantasy of himself as a powerful, successful businessman, an illusion he milked to the hilt in his presidential campaigns, fooling millions into thinking he knows what he's doing financially. Never mind that he came from a very wealthy family to begin with and blew through millions of daddy's dollars, all while engaging in failing businesses one after the other throughout his whole career. Trump's MO is always to blame others for his own failures and take credit for other people's successes. He's at it again with his Sun North Node, creating illusions and confusion about the economy, claiming it's great while in fact inflation is up, employment is down, the real estate market is terrible, businesses can't plan for the future, and experts are predicting a recession, all because of his chaotic and illegal tariffs. Trump's Gemini Sun aspects with the North Node at the top of his chart emphasize his communication style, with Gemini's reputation for double-talking and flip-flopping, linked with the North Node's exaggeration of his egomania and desire for high status, enveloping all of that in illusions. Trump's at his core a salesman, as many say a con man, who specializes in selling himself. His ridiculous exaggerations and absurd overuse of superlatives give away his megalomania, Sun Rahu's domain, as he's always describing things affiliated with himself as the most or the best the world has ever seen, from his crowd sizes and TV ratings to the stats he makes up out of thin air about his tariffs to the laughable 1,500% he said he'd reduce drug prices by. This is not the mind of a business genius or even a person competent in grade school math, let alone high finance. As Jeffrey Epstein told journalist Michael Wolff, Trump can't even read a balance sheet. Rahu's expertise with smoke and mirrors helps Trump conjure up illusions and outright fantasies that resonate with people's fears as well as desires for what he says he'll do for them. With Rahu's help, Trump's very good at lying, at making people believe whatever he says. Moreover, Trump's sun gets a huge assist from its trine to its powerful sextmate Jupiter, who was stationary on June 14, 1946, and went direct a mere 3 hours after Trump was born. This is a very powerful Jupiter. It makes a fortunate trine to his Sun and North Node, and an even closer trine to his Uranus, since they share the same degree. Jupiter is expansive. It makes things bigger, which supercharges Trump's use of superlatives. The best, the most, the greatest, the biggest. Jupiter also represents good luck, as it's the great benefic. It rules publishing, the law, religion, foreigners, and long-distance travel. Trump's Jupiter is in decent shape by sect and has the most essential dignity of any of his traditional planets, being its own term lord and in mutual reception with Saturn as an exaltation lord, which explains Trump's ability to wrap many highly placed authorities around his finger. However, Jupiter is also the planet of justice, and Saturn the planet of karma, so you'd think they wouldn't let him get away with every illegal thing he does, especially since his Saturn, remember, is afflicted by being Munakara, and so embattled in Trump's chart, angry and unhappy. Saturn's also in detriment in Cancer, but because Cancer is Jupiter's exaltation and Jupiter's in Libra, Saturn's exaltation, these two planets help each other out through the principle of generosity, since there's no Ptolemaic aspect between them unless you allow for wide orbs. But Jupiter, being the faster-moving planet in Libra, casts a separating Dexter square by sign on the slower-moving planet Saturn in Cancer when traveling clockwise around the chart in diurnal motion. So Trump's super lucky stationary, strong Jupiter is designed in his chart to rescue Saturn from trouble, just as Trump's MAGA SCOTUS, representing Jupiter, bails him out again and again from legal challenges and obstacles represented by Saturn. So his Sun North Node, his ability to create fantasies about how great and successful he is and make people believe him, is very strongly supported by this powerful, lucky Jupiter who aids Trump in all his power plays, foreign and domestic, legal and illegal. Let's look at Trump's Venus declination aspects now. Venus is parallel Trump's Gemini stellium of Uranus, North Node, and Sun, and contra-parallel her sect lord and sign ruler, Moon. Venus rules love, partnership, beauty, comfort, the arts, and money, and things of value. Venus rules Trump's Taurus midheaven, with his Gemini stellium in the 10th Placidus house, so she has a big effect on his career and public reputation. And she rules his 3rd Libra house of communication and siblings. Venus is her own triplicity lord, so has some decent essential dignity and fair sect dignity, since she's at least in a feminine sign. But she's conjunct Trump's Munakara Saturn and is ruled by his Munakara moon. Venus is in Trump's Placidus 11th house of friends and organizations and career perks, which is a good placement, but in the whole sign system, she's in the unfortunate 12th house of secrets, unseen enemies, suffering, loss, institutions, and dreams in the unconscious. So overall, Venus's condition is mixed in Trump's chart, maybe leaning slightly more to challenging than helpful. Let's look first at Uranus, since that's Venus's strongest declination aspect, a parallel. Uranus is the planet of independence, of sudden, shocking changes and brilliance or visionary ideas. It has a much different vibe than Venus, planet of love and partnerships, especially if Venus demands commitment, though Uranus does provide lots of excitement in relationships and can spark sexual interest. In terms of relationships, Trump seems to have found a good mate in Melania. She's stuck with him after all his cheating and is being found liable for sexual assault against E. Jean Carroll. We know about Karen McDougal, the Playboy model, and Stormy Daniels, the adult film star, who Trump had affairs with while married to Melania, as well as other women who've come forward to tell about Trump sexually assaulting them once the Access Hollywood pussy-grabbing video came out in October 2016.
Grab him by the pussy?
It was originally recorded, though, in September 2005. So when Trump told Billy Bush, referring to a married woman,
I moved on her like a bitch, but I couldn't get there, and she was married.
He'd been married to Melania for 9 months, since January of that year, though they met in 1998 when he was married to Marla Maples, his second wife that he cheated on with his first wife, Ivana. Melania doesn't live with him in the White House, manifesting that Uranian energy of independence. And true to a Venus-Uranus aspect, they need distance or a level of independence from each other. It probably helps that she's getting $40 million from billionaire Trump suck-up Jeff Bezos to tell her life story in an Amazon-produced documentary, in addition to sharing in many Trump grifts that enrich her personally. Venus rules money, and with Uranus, that could mean some unusual or shocking transactions. Though it appears Trump didn't fall out with Jeffrey Epstein until around October 2007, when Epstein's name was removed as a member at Mar-a-Lago. 3 years earlier than that, in summer 2004, Trump and Epstein got into a bidding war over a 62,000 square foot Palm Beach oceanfront mansion with 18 bedrooms and 22 bathrooms, and Trump won, paying just over $41 million for it, using foreign Deutsche Bank for the financing, though they were already holding questionable loans for him. He sold the property to a Russian oligarch 4 years later, in 2008, for $95 million, way above market price. It looked suspicious since the Russian never lived in the property, and he seemingly came out of nowhere to rescue Trump financially with his massive wire transfer months before one of Trump's loans came due. Trump was already embroiled in financial troubles for his failing Atlantic City casinos that would soon go bankrupt. Trump was also selling quite a few multi-million-dollar Florida condos to Russians via their shell companies around this time. It's when Don Jr. bragged in 2008, "We see a lot of money pouring in from Russia." As Craig Unger, a journalist and author of books on Trump's Russian mafia ties, writes, was this simply a lucky real estate flip for Trump, or a disguised financial rescue, a covert political favor, or a means of influence? We've all seen how easily Trump solicits money from his ardent followers, courtesy of Venus's parallel to Uranus and parallels to Trump's Sun and North Node, ruling the masses. Venus's parallel to his Gemini stellium describes the unconventional financial schemes Trump's been involved in, especially as a candidate and now as president, with his relentless email and text pleas for money, but also with the sale of gold sneakers, watches, Bibles, NFTs, and now the crypto products, with NFTs, crypto tokens, and meme coins all being non-material or non-physical things of value that exist only in an electronic network or a blockchain. Trump's increased his personal wealth by a few $1 billion in the first few months of his second term already, as I mentioned earlier, thanks to his newfound crypto business that, as president, he can exploit to his own benefit, ensuring the industry is not regulated to his detriment, and, for so long as he controls the DOJ and the MAGA Congress, he's never going to be investigated for corruption. But Uranus, planet of sudden shocks, also has the potential to throw a wrench into Trump's finances, and in fact, most of his businesses have gone belly up, as I said. Trump's Venus and Uranus make no aspect by sign or degree to each other, so they're just linked via this parallel. Same thing for Venus and the Sun and Venus and the North Node. Trump's owned several beauty pageants, including Miss Teen USA from 1995 to 2015. On Howard Stern's radio show in April 2005, a few months after he married Melania, Trump said he would barge into the women's dressing room when the beauty contestants were changing and look them over. He said he could get away with it as the owner of the pageant, since he could claim he was just inspecting. Several women who were teens back then confirmed Trump did walk in on them while they were half naked. Venus in the 11th Placidus house and Uranus in the 10th Placidus house links this shocking behavior of the pageant's owner or boss, 10th, with the traditional old-fashioned women's organization's beauty pageants, 11th house, though the 12th house whole sign placement of Venus in his chart reveals the behind-the-scenes, seedier nature of his involvement. Venus's parallel to Trump's Sun and contra-parallel to his Moon hints at issues and tensions with her sect lord and Cancer's sign ruler Moon, while vibing better with the opposite sect lord, the Sun. Venus parallel the Sun seems to manifest for Trump as women playing the role of arm candy and trophy wives, puffing up Trump's ego and image of himself as a desirable catch. The contra-parallel to his Moon makes it difficult for him to choose suitable partners, since his feelings and needs aren't aligned. Thus, he's had 3 wives, numerous affairs, and has been found liable for at least 1 case of sexual assault. He's also expressed provocative, incestuous vibes about his daughter, Ivanka.
If Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her. You know?
This with his Sun affects his artistic tastes and makes him sociable. Trump's aesthetic has been described as vulgar, tacky, and overly ostentatious. Also, bright, brassy, and loud, like dictator chic, since everything is gilt and mirrors, including his name, always in huge gold letters on buildings, confirming his egotism and grandiosity. Trump likes being in social gatherings, but only as the center of attention, with everyone present acknowledging his superior status. Eberton provides a negative interpretation of Sun-Venus, which seems more on the mark for Trump. Uncontrolled love attachment, pleasure-seeking, luxury, everything is done for the sake of external appearance and show, without intrinsic or inner value. Venus parallel to the North Node emphasizes Trump's need for affection. He doesn't just want to be admired for his status, that's Sun-North Node. He wants to be liked by everyone as well. This again makes him very easy to manipulate, since all you have to do is flatter and praise him and tell him how much you like him, and he's putty in your hands. Venus parallel Uranus, Sun, and North Node, and contra-parallel Trump's Moon, have manifested in Trump's life then, primarily as shocking and/or unconventional relationships, as well as shocking and/or unconventional financial dealings, all of which adds to Trump's status, wealth, and prestige with his adoring followers, but leaves a portion of the general public cold, especially women not adoring of him, represented by his Moon. The 12th house whole sign placement of his Venus with Saturn and Cancer hints at his shady, secretive dealings with women and money that involve his family, and that he's ever in danger of incarceration or suffering or loss from a hard Venus transit or progression. I'll be going into much more detail about Trump's chart in upcoming videos. I just wanted to give you a demonstration here about how parallels and contraparallels can be integrated into your astrological analysis, since they provide useful testimonies about planetary couplings that, as I said before, support and emphasize existing zodiacal aspects, and also lend more depth and insight into planetary associations not linked by longitudinal aspects. That's it for now. Please look for my next series of videos focused on Pluto and its declination cycles. Thanks for watching Astromantic. See you next time.